There we go. Okay, sorry about that. My name is Howard Eber, and I am still an addict. I apologize in condensing things for the weekend. I left out step one. So we're going to go through that real quickly. If you turn to page 44, I ask people, we start at the fourth line. If when you honestly wanted to, you found you cannot quit entirely, or when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic, you're probably an addict. So what I ask people to do is, it won't be in your book, in the handouts. I don't think it's in the handouts, because I said I think I left it out. Okay? It comes right before step 2 on page 11 in those books. But I left out step 1. So I'm going to tell you what it is. It's very easy. We start on page 44. You may want to make a note of it. Page 44. Take these two statements and make them questions. So the first question is, have I been able to quit entirely on my own? Right? The book says, if when you want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. So the question is, have I been able to quit entirely on my own? Second question, it says, if you have any control over the amount you take, you're probably an alcoholic. The second question is, do I have any control over the amount I take once I start? Those are the two questions to consider. And if we've considered them, then we go back to page, excuse me, I believe it's 22. Nope. Well, basically, I don't need the book to tell me this. The beginning is we had to concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic, right? Anyone know what page that is off the top of your head? 30. Thank you. Don't get old. It's the second thing to go, but it just... So the statement is that we had to admit to our innermost self that we were alcoholic, right? That is the first step in recovery. So after we've answered those other two steps, those are the two questions, here's the key question. Have you conceded? Conceded, not admitted. Have you conceded? Concession means total unconditional surrender. There's no daylight there. Total unconditional surrender. Surrender isn't in the book. Is you aware that the word surrender does not appear anywhere in the first 164 pages? You'd think the way we use it in meetings that it's on every page. It's not. I've surrendered plenty of times. I conceded once. So the question is, have I conceded to my innermost self that I was alcoholic? So I ask you all, have you conceded to your innermost self that you're alcoholic? Or that you're an addict? Congratulations, you've just taken the first step. Done. Then we go up in your books to page 11. I apologize for that. That's what happens when I work too fast. Okay, on page 11 in your book, if you turn to page 47 in the big book, probably confusing the hell out of everybody. But you go to page 47, and what you'll find is, remember the last assignment we had was to make a list of the qualities that we want our higher power to have. So now we have a concept that we can start to build upon. So on the top of page 47, it says, when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. Not mine, not my sponsors, not anybody else's. That piece of paper that you wrote on, there's your conception. Excuse me. This applies too to other spiritual expressions you'll find in this book, like prayer, like meditation. Those are the three biggies, the three disciplines of spirituality, and they're created by you. You make that up yourself. Do not let any prejudice you have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. In other words, this all starts with an examination of our beliefs. It says, let me read it again, by honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. Not what you've been taught, not what you've been told. What does God mean to you? What does prayer mean to you? What does meditation mean to you? These are the things we have to lay aside for us to do this. But Bill says it begins with an examination of our beliefs. All of the garbage we've been told, all of the things we've been taught that interfere with our ability to come up with a power greater than ourselves, that interfere with our prayer and meditation, we've got to put that aside. That's what that is telling us. So, let me continue. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious contact with God as we understood Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere, so we used our own conception, however limited it was. And right now it's very limited. It's a list of qualities. That's all it is. We haven't gone too much further than that. And then it says, we needed. Needed is a must. If you need something, you must do it. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. One short question. And I don't mean to slam other fellowships, but there's another fellowship that has a workbook that has 70 some odd questions on step 2. Unbelievable. We have one question, and here it is. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? Very simple. So, if we ask ourselves that question, and Mark Houston, those of you who are familiar with Mark Houston know who he is. Those who know who he is, know who he is. That's very good. Okay. He came up with an improvement on step 2 for those of you who have been through it many times before. And I think it's up there behind me. The bottom says, do you now believe, or are you willing to believe, that there is a power greater than yourself that can take you beyond where you are now in every area of your life, past here, past the experience you've already had? Do you believe there are realms of peace, love, freedom, happiness, and understanding, areas of consciousness, wisdom, and power that you cannot even imagine? I love that step 2. But the book says to ask ourselves one short question. So I ask you, do you now believe, or are you willing to believe, that there is a power greater than yourself? Yes. Congratulations, you're done with step 2. And we're going to start on step 3. Let's turn to page 12, page 62. First paragraph, first full paragraph. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. The root is what gives life to the tree, gives life to the plant. That's how the plant survives. That's how our disease survives, is by being fed by our selfishness and self-centeredness. That's our root. We're being fed that, and that causes our disease. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some point in the past, We have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Why are we taking an inventory? Well, we have to look at the things that were ruling, controlling, and dominating us up until this point. We just made a decision, or about to make a decision, excuse me, that God is going to be our director, that He's going to be the principal. So, why do we start by asking, what are our angers, our fears, our guilt and shame that we carry around? It's a connection between the thought, defective thought, and using. When I made decisions based on self, I was frightened, irresponsible, inconsiderate, dishonest, selfish, self-seeking, judgmental. When I made a decision based on one of those things, when I made a decision based on my relentless pursuit of my own desires, the result was I stepped on the toes of those around me. I was in collision, spiritually, mentally, and physically. See, the problem with self-will is we all have it. And if I try and force my self-will on you or some situation, you're not going to like it. I step in on your toes. So what do? You push back. That's what the book says. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. What happens when they retaliate? I'm entitled to a little retaliation too. So when they push me back, what do? I get angry, I get fearful, I act in a harmful manner. In other words, I become resentful. And when I'm resentful, I will always drug, I will always drink. So if this chain of events is to be broken, if I am to eliminate that action of drinking and drugging, I have to first determine the thought that created that chain and eliminate those things from my life. That's the connection between thoughts and actions. I know people say this all the time, but I cannot act my way into good thinking. I know you've all heard that at meetings. I can't act my way into good thinking because all action is based on thought. All action. I cannot reach over and pick up this paper without my brain telling my arm to tell my hand to pick up the paper. All action, picking the paper up, is up here. Even if you say, well, I'm going to act my way into good thinking, then I could just act the right way. But didn't that start with a thought? You thought you could act your way into good thinking. It all starts with thinking. Our problems are of self, not anything, not our neighbors, not our parents, none of that stuff. So we've got the connection between thoughts and actions. Turn to page 63 in our book. Paragraph begins, we are now at step 3. Excuse me. Many of us said to ourselves, to our Maker, as we understood Him, and how about we do this all together? Do we have it up there? Let's take the third step together. God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me and do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy way always. Good. Nobody said amen. Sometimes people do that at meetings, and there's no amen in the book. You want to know where amen is? It's 13 pages later on step 7. It says we have now completed step 7, because amen means so be it. It indicates the end of something and the beginning of something else. So we are starting something in the third step here, and we are going to complete it by the time we get to the 7th step. That's why amen appears there and not here. So we take the third step. Congratulations, you've all taken the third step together. And now we're going to get to some fun. How do we take an inventory? Let's go to page 63. We're on page 63. Bottom of the page, last 2 lines. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, excuse me, steps 4 through 9. Vigorous action isn't just step 4, it's steps 4 through 9. The first step of which is a personal housekeeping. There's your 4th step, which many of us had never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step. Vital is life-giving. Vital is life-supporting. Vital is something you cannot live without. Crucial means the same thing. I have 2 lungs. My lungs aren't vital organs because I could live with one of them. My kidneys aren't vital organs. I could live with one of them. My heart is a vital organ. I can't live without it. I've lived most of my life as if the brain weren't a vital organ, but it is. Technically, it is. I just managed to survive without using it too much. Excuse me. So, it says we launched out on this next course of action. This was step 4. Let's go on the same page down to the bottom paragraph. Resentment is the number 1 offender. Resentment, and now most of you know this, thank God. Resentment is 2 words. R-E means to do again, and sentiment comes from the Latin word sentire. So resentment means to do something again, to relive something. I hear very often people say the topic is resentment, and everyone talks about their anger. Resentment is all of this. Resentment is anger, resentment is fear, resentment is reliving my sex harms and my harms done to others. It's all one ball of resentment. I'm reliving these things. So he starts out the paragraph by telling us that resentment is the number 1 offender. Excuse me, it destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From its stem, once again, all forms of spiritual dis-ease. For we have not only been mentally and physically ill, we've been spiritually sick. 3 dimensions. Let me go over it again. Mentally, the obsession. Physically, the allergy. Spiritually sick, the spiritual malady. When the spiritual malady is overcome, steps 1, 2, and 3, we straighten out mentally, steps 4 through 7, and physically, 8 and 9. In dealing with resentments, we put them on paper. That is not just an instruction for the 4th step. Anywhere in the book where it talks about resentments, especially in the 10th, 11th step, was I resentful? I should be taking out a piece of paper and going through the columns. Now, I don't need to do the paper anymore. I could do it up here. But it still tells me when dealing with resentments, I have an assignment. And it doesn't limit it to just this page. Every night and every morning, I talk to God about resentments. So when dealing with resentments in the beginning, write them down. Go through the columns, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So he said, excuse me, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we not were resentful, with whom we were angry. We're looking at our angers first. And I like to give out this prompt sheet. I never met an addict who didn't know exactly who he was angry at. So the people are easy. We make a list of people, principles, and institutions with whom we were angry. Institutions are pretty easy. Principles takes a little bit of work. Principles are things that we're told, maybe we're taught by our parents, maybe in school, things that we carry around that just cause us anger, cause us confusion. For example, one of my guys put down the expression, all men are created equal. He's black. That's not his experience. So every time he hears someone say that, he gets angry. He's conflicted because his experience is other than that. We all have those things. My parents taught me never attack, never use your hands in anger. Never strike another human being. I believe that. I lived like that. I taught my son that way. But when I was a kid, I was always the shortest one in class. I was a chubby little kid. I had braces and glasses in the 2nd grade. I got picked on. And I never fought back because my parents would be ashamed of me. So I felt I was doing the right thing, but I was conflicted because I also felt like I was a coward. That's what we're talking about. One of the things I put at the top of my list is something that we didn't read here, but it's a few pages ahead. So our troubles, a few pages in the past, page 62 says, so our troubles we think were basically of our own making. That is a principle I put on my list because I didn't think it was right. Didn't take me long to realize how accurate it was, but this is what we're doing in the fourth step. We're starting out by making a list of these things. So I ask them, if you turn, give me the next page. We've got a notebook. It's page 15. Okay, all right, move up one more so you can see the notebook. There we go. Just take a simple notebook and make 4 columns out of it. So I'm sitting with the guy. We may be there maybe an hour or so by this time. We're going to make a list on that paper in this first column. A list of names, a list of institutions, a list of principles that made you angry. And if you don't think you're angry, how about annoyed? Does anything annoy you besides my just telling you to do that? Write that down. And I'm going to be back in 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to get a cup of coffee or something. You start that list. Go as far as you can. Pick the low-hanging fruit for column 1. This is not going to finish the whole job, but it's going to get you farther along. The second column, you can go back to the other one. It kind of defines it, is the cause. What did that person do to deserve a special place in hell, as far as I was concerned? Why was I angry at that person? What did they do? Were they inconsiderate to me? Were they frightened? Were they irresponsible? Were they dishonest with me? Not only who I'm angry at, but why? And there's a reason why I put it in that terms, and you'll see in a moment. This requires a little thinking, a little concentration. Column 3. What basic instinct of mine was hurt or threatened by what you did? I cannot be angry at you unless you hurt or threaten one of my basic instincts. What are my basic instincts? My self-esteem, my pride, my sense of security, and security has three elements to it. It's physical security, which is my body. Did you harm my body? There's financial security, the hip national bank. Did you hurt me financially? And emotional security, my general sense of well-being. What did you affect one of those things? Did you affect my relations, personal relations, my friends, relatives, people I work with, neighbors? Did you interfere with my sex relations? Don't have to explain that. Did you interfere with my ambitions? And this is one that you may not think gets a lot of attention, but it should get a lot of attention. Ambition is my ability to accomplish tasks, simple tasks. I want to go to the store because I want to go into the grocery store and pick up some stuff, but I see Joe Flimmelgates just walked in there, and I can't stand Flimmelgates. So I go do something else for a while. My anger towards Flimmelgates has affected my ambition. I cannot walk in that store because I'll run into him. There's a family wedding I want to go to. I really want to go to it. But my cousin David's going to be there, and I cannot stand to be around this guy. So my anger at David has affected my ability to attend a wedding I would like to attend. This is important because by the time we get to the end of it, you're going to see how many times ambition came up. And what is ambition? My way. You interfered with my way. I wanted to attend that wedding, but David was there, so he interfered with my ambition. He interfered with myself, with what I want to do. When I put ambition down, it just means you have interfered with my plans. Isn't that what it means? You'll be amazed at how many of you turn out to be. My sponsor, when he first did this with me, said, I had no idea what a power monger you were. I didn't think I was so power hungry, but ambition came up all the time. Okay, last column, the money column. What we write in this column are the wrongs that we're going to talk about in step 5, the defects in step 6, and the shortcomings in step 7 all come out of that 4th column. What mistake did I make? Was I frightened? Was I irresponsible, inconsiderate, dishonest, selfish, self-seeking, judgmental? Now remember, in the 2nd column, we were isolating that person we were angry at because maybe they were dishonest or maybe they were irresponsible. So we're asking ourselves in that last column, did I do those things myself? I'm angry at this guy because he stole some money from me. So in that 4th column, did I ever steal money from anyone? Was I ever dishonest? What mistakes did I make? Not what part did I play. That's not in the book. I hear that a lot and it drives me nuts. It doesn't say what part did I play. What mistake did I make? And column 2 and column 4 start to look the same. Because what I'm angry at in column 2 is usually things I've done in column 4. Okay? So I have them do that now. Take a 15, 20 minutes, a half hour. Get me some low-hanging fruit. You don't have to go back in your history for everybody. You can do that later. Right now, what comes to mind when I'm talking about anger? People, institutions, and principles. Ask them to write it down. When they've written it down, and incidentally, what I like to do is do that with them. I'll write it down. I'll write it for you. I've got the notebook. Tell me what to write in column 1. And tell me what column 2 and column 3 and column 4. It moves a lot faster when I do the writing. So I ask him to do that because it also puts us into a 5th step arena. But once we get the angers done, page 68. Now, if anyone, I'm sure you all are, have listened to Joe and Charlie, you know that Joe and Charlie suggest that the that the fears list be made like that, in columns. For years I did that. For years I taught that because that's what I was taught. But that's not what the book says. And I had to go back and study what the book says. And it couldn't be any clearer. I felt like a fool for explaining it the other way because the book tells me very clearly what to do. Page 68. Let's see what it says. There are only 3 directions here. Number 1, we reviewed our fears thoroughly. Make a list. Once again, we're making a list of fears. I do the same thing with a prompt sheet. Give you some ideas of what to put down. Some things have more than one meaning, like fear of confrontation. Confrontation could be someone who works for me and I got to straighten him out. Well, my son might have done something and I need to have a come to Jesus discussion. It's confronting people like that. But for me, people were a problem. I wouldn't go out of my house to go to work if I looked out and I saw some of my neighbors were also going out. I didn't even want to confront. I didn't want to say hello to them. If I went to the grocery store and I saw Paul and I didn't like Paul walking around there, I would leave. I would leave. So the point is, I'm afraid of the confrontation. Just saying, hey, Paul, how you doing? That fear of people with me was a big one. So I put confrontation down for both reasons. But it's just to give you some ideas. And there's so much there that you can start with. As you get older, the end of the list is going to start to be a little bit more of an issue. Fear of dysfunction, fear of public speaking, fear of cancer, fear of heart attack, fear of Parkinson's. As you get older, these are legitimate fears. So we put them down. We are looking for irrational fears, incidentally. I should have mentioned that earlier. There are two types of fears. There's rational fears. That's what God-given protection mechanisms. We're all a little afraid of the dark. Why? Because we're not born with headlights. We're all a little afraid of heights. Why? We don't have wings. Those are legitimate fear of spiders, for example. That's a kind of a legitimate fear, but it becomes an irrational fear when it rules, controls, and dominates my life. My fear of spiders becomes irrational if I never go out at night, or I would never go to a picnic, or I would never sit outside on a chair because there might be a spider there. I think everybody has these, has dentists and clowns on their list, right? Dentists. Rational fear, isn't it? They drill into the enamel of your teeth. It's not fun. But if you are so fearful of that dentist that you never go, it ruled, controlled, and dominated your life, it's going to end with you having to have a major amount of work, which is what you were avoiding in the first place. So just think about these fears. So what it says in the book, the direction is we reviewed our fears, we put them on paper. So I write, I am afraid of, next one you can. We just make a simple list of what we're afraid of. There we go. Easily done. Easy peasy. This is probably the only writing that you will do in the fears inventory. Because the next thing it says, we asked ourselves why we had them. God bless Bill Wilson. He asks a question, he always gives us the answer. And here's the answer. Why did I have that? Looking back over my lifetime, I can't identify a single fear that didn't revolve around, I'm afraid of losing something, I'm afraid of not getting something, I'm afraid of being revealed, something I don't want you to know about is revealed. So I can ask myself, which of those things had to do with my fear? But the real fear, it is suggested that the reason for our fears was because self-reliance failed. Reliance upon self. If you got your book out, we're on page 68, paragraph 1. Excuse me. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. That's the sentence I'm trying to draw attention to. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. Why do I have these fears? Because the only thing I had to depend on was me. I never brought God into the picture. My sponsor taught me that anytime I bring God into the discussion, things change. I may not see them, I may not know what they are, but when God comes into the picture, the dynamics change. And that's what we're talking about here, is recognizing that the reason I have that fear is because I didn't bring God into it. I relied on myself. That's the answer Bill gives us. The book points out that now we're on a different path, the path of trusting and relying upon God, whereas we have limited, finite resources, God's powers are infinite. So if we want relief, we've got to ask. And then we have to act as God would have us act. And then the last instruction is a prayer. We earnestly ask Him to remove our fear of whatever it is and direct our attention to what He would have us be. What would God have me be? Courageous. What's the opposite of fear? Courage. Ask God to give me the courage to do whatever it is I have to do. To walk into that store and say hello to Paul. To go to that picnic that's going to be outside and sit where there are bugs and so on. To go to the dentist when I have a toothache. Asking God to give me the strength to do that. It's a partnership. That's simple for the fear list. Let's go to the sex harms list. So basically the fear list is just I am afraid of, because the second and the third part are the same. Sex harms. Let's turn to page 69. Anyone ever wonder about that? Why everything about sex in this book is on page 69? I don't know. Could be a coincidence. I don't know. But I want to take you to page 69, paragraph 2, that begins with, "In this way." On the second line it says, "We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not?" So the criteria, if you bring this up a little bit, you'll see on the bottom I've written criteria. Keep going. Keep going. There we go. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? So how do I know what selfish is? Well, Bill continues to tell us, let me continue reading. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given, therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. So he's telling me that the primary purpose of sex is procreation, reproduction, and mutual satisfaction. Okay? So if I am engaging in a sexual activity that is for other reasons, not because of procreation, not because of mutual satisfaction, I am engaging in them for selfish reasons. How do I know what the selfish reasons are? We look at column 3. Did I engage in this activity because of my self-esteem? I wanted to feel better about myself. Did I do it because of pride? Because I wanted to tell you, I wanted to boast of my conquest to you. Did I do it for reasons of emotional security? I'm lonely. I need that help. I want you to be there for me singly. This is not mutual satisfaction. Physical security, and this is probably more for women than anything else, I would imagine, that you engage in some activity because you're afraid of getting hurt, physically or financially, because the next one is financial security. Ambitions, which is to control someone. Personal relations, again, I'm lonely, I need attention, I engage in this. It's not what I want to do, but I do it because I'm afraid of not having this person in my life. Excuse me. So if I know, that's the criteria for what goes in the first column. Was it for reasons of procreation or mutual satisfaction, or was it something else? And it's the something else that we look at and we put down in column 1, and column 2 is what did we do? Column 4 is what feelings did we create in others? And we don't have to know what they said they felt like. Put yourself in their position. If it was done to you, how would you feel? And again, what mistakes did I make? Was I frightened, irresponsible, inconsiderate, dishonest, selfish, self-seeking? And most of the time, like I said, I'm sitting down, I'm writing this. And the columns are a bit the same as the other one, only we add the 5th column for this. Excuse me. And with that, we are done with the 4th step. It doesn't have to take weeks and months. We can get that low-hanging fruit, and we can get it within an hour or 2. This whole thing is based on an 8-hour presentation. That if I sit with you for 4 hours one day and 4 hours the next day, we will accomplish all of this. I'm skipping some things and rushing through some things, but you may want to, if you're up until that point, leave the inventory, finish it tonight, we'll come back tomorrow and start the 5th step. We've already started it anyway, but that could be a time at which you could stop and then begin the next day. It's based on 4 hours one day and 4 hours the next day. That should accomplish all of this, and does. So on step 5, page 72, and again, this is easier because we've done a lot of this. Having made our personal inventory, what do we do about it? We've been trying to get a new attitude, step 2, a new relationship, step 3, with our Creator, and discover the obstacles in our path, step 4. We've admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is, because there's no perfect 4th step. We do it as best we can. Now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part. I'm going to jump ahead, and basically this is where we discover those things in that 5th column to be the problem that we need to fix. The 5th column reveals what our problem is. Those thoughts, those self-imposed thoughts, frightened, irresponsible, inconsiderate, dishonest, selfish, self-seeking, judgmental, those are the thoughts that we're talking about in column 5. And why is that important? Because in step 6, we look at that handful of defects and say, I don't want to be this way anymore. Let's take a look at page 75, paragraph 2. Second line, once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. That feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will come strongly. I had somebody recently who, when I read that, said, I don't feel that. It says, when we've taken that step, I'm supposed to be delighted. I'm not delighted. I can look the world in the eye. I still can't. I still won't walk down the street if I see this guy coming in my direction. We can be alone in perfect peace. When I'm alone, I'm still lonely. When I'm in the right spiritual condition, I'm alone. I'm just alone. But the point is, he said he didn't feel any of these. Didn't feel the nearness of our Creator. And what I pointed out is that these are all promises. These are promises that once we've completed that step, we are going to be able to look the world in the eye. We are going to be alone at peace and ease. We will feel the nearness of our Creator. We will begin to have a spiritual experience. It uses the word can. It doesn't say we did or we are. It says we can do these things. So if you haven't felt those things when you're at that point after the 5th step, that's okay. That's okay. It says that it's a possibility. First time I did my 5th step, I really did feel those things. But if you don't, that's okay. Because it's not a guarantee. It's a promise. It says if you do this, you'll get that. Step 6. I look at these handful of defects. Let's go back to the thoughts and actions. It starts out by telling us in step 6 to review what we've done. There we go. It says take the book down off the shelf and review what we've done. What have we done? Well, admitting powerless in step 1 opens us up for the power in step 2. Believing in that power in step 2 prepares us for the decision in step 3. Making the decision in 3 sends us on a quest to face and be rid of the things that block us in step 4. By identifying these things in 4, we're prepared to admit them to God and another human being in 5. And by recognizing the damage these thoughts have had on our lives, in step 5, we become ready to have God remove them in step 6. Because in step 5, we have that 5th column, that last column. My problems, I am frightened, irresponsible, inconsiderate, dishonest, selfish, self-seeking, judgmental. And I don't want to be that guy anymore. And that's all there is to step 6. It's just looking at that and saying, I don't want to be that person anymore. Am I now ready to let God remove from me all the things which we've admitted are objectionable? If so, we're done with step 6. I was at a meeting the other day. The guy said he's on step 6 and he's been working on it for, you ready? 2 years. How long do you want to sit in that dirty diaper? I mean, in the beginning, it's nice, it's warm, it's mushy, it's comfortable, right? But eventually, it starts to stink, and it's cold, and it's wet, and you got to get that off. And you're sitting in it for 2 years? You got to get rid of that. You got to change something. And that's what step 7 does. Step 7 teaches me the mechanics of change. That when I experience one of these defective thoughts in the course of the day, I am being dishonest. I had a situation when I was first working this step. went to the grocery store, bought one item, gave the young lady, the cashier, a $10 bill. She gave me change of a 20. So basically gave me back my original $10. I took it and I put it in my pocket and I walked out and I felt like crap because I knew I had just stolen $10 from the store. And as I'm walking to the car, I'm feeling worse and worse and worse. I get in the car, I'm about to put the key in the ignition before I say stop. God, help me be honest now. Not next time, not later. I spent my whole life doing that. Now. And with God's help in my willpower, because I have to exercise my will, it's the proper use of the will that counts. I get out of that car, I walk down the street, back into the store, and I walk up to that cashier, and I didn't say she made a mistake. I said, excuse me, I made a mistake. I'm trying to live my life by certain spiritual principles, and one of which is honesty, and I was dishonest. This $10 belongs to you. And he looked at me like I had 8 heads, but I walked out of that store on top of the world because I put my 7th step to work. And you got to be careful if you work the 7th step this way, the blame game is over. Put down the blame thrower. If you remain frightened, irresponsible, inconsiderate, dishonest, selfish, self-seeking after you've been given the tools for how to change, it's because you made that decision. You decided to stay that way. It's not your parents, it's not the church, it's not any one of the people you blame for the problems you have. It's you, because you have decided not to make use of all of this. And if you make use of it, you begin to function on a different level. You begin to exercise your assets. Instead of being frightened, you're courageous. Instead of being irresponsible, you're responsible, and so on. When you run into yourself on a daily basis, and this will eventually become the 10th step, but at this point, it's the 7th step. We're teaching you how to change. So we do that. We get the person to understand that concept. Steps 8 and 9. For simplification purposes, I made this list up. And incidentally, the word is amends with an S. You know that the word amend means something entirely different? For years, I was teaching that what we are doing is making amend. We're amending. Amend means change something. That's not what the step says. The step says amends with an S. And if you look it up in the dictionary, amends with an S is defined as compensation for loss, reparation. Amend means to improve, change, or correct. That's different than amends. They're close, but they're not the same thing. So what we're doing is we're making amends. And what are the amends? What does it mean? Bill lists them in several different places. Page 76 and 77, repair the damage done, sweep away the debris, set right the wrong, straighten out the past, and so on. What are the categories? Bill gives us 8 categories of amends. He is not giving us the order in which to make them. Please, I've heard that in book studies, and I disagree with it so much. He's giving us examples, and he's actually doing it in reverse. Because in the 12 and 12, he says, we start with those nearest and dearest. And those are the ones that are at the bottom of the list. The family and the wrongs we can never fully right, wives and parents. We start with those closest to us. But he's giving us examples. How to make amends to business acquaintances and friends. How do we make amends to the men we hate, which is the same thing as former enemies? The people we owe money to, criminal offenses, etc. Then it's got a whole list of guiding principles when we're doing that. And the most important one is on the second page. There we go. Remember why we're doing this. We're not making amends to be liked, to be accepted, to be rewarded, to be complimented. We're not there to set right their wrongs. We're here to set right our wrongs. So the book tells us on page 77 that our motive in making an amends is a sincere desire to set right the wrong, not be liked, not be accepted, none of those things. And it also says, right after the motive, it says, what's the action? What do we take? What action do we take? A demonstration of goodwill. A demonstration. If I say that I've stolen X number of dollars from you and I'm going to pay you back at a rate of $20 a week, I'm giving you the first $20 now. I'm not saying we'll start next week. I did that my whole life. A demonstration of goodwill. We're telling them what we did, we're telling them what we're going to do, and we start to do it. And one of the important things, since we're doing this fast, you can go to the next page, we can set up a grid. It's very easy. We start putting a list of who did I harm. Simple. Whatever comes to mind, put it down. What did you do? Don't do the other columns yet. Just write down who you're angry at, who you have harmed, and what you did. And once you have columns 1 and 2 at least substantially done, then you have to decide who goes first. I divided it into now, later, maybe, and never, because that's the way Joe and Charlie taught me to do it. But you could do it simply now and later. There may be some nevers, those people who, that son of a bitch, I am never going to say I'm sorry to him, never going to happen. Well, I guarantee you, I promise you, and I bet you $20, whatever that is in pounds, that by the time you make the amends to the nows and the laters and the maybes, you are ready for those people you said you would never do it to again. You start to get the rewards of making those amends. In fact, I got so hot on it, my sponsor had to start taking names off my list because I was going to apologize and make amends, rather, for some things that I didn't harm them. So, bottom of this list has 3 questions. Anybody we go to, there's a script also, which we'll look at in another page or two. But after making that presentation, there are 3 questions that have to be asked. Can you tell me how this made you feel? How can I make it right? And is there anything else you'd like to say to me? And after each of those questions, we are quiet. Joe and Charlie would say, shut up and listen, but I don't like the word shut up. Just be quiet and listen to what they have to say. And if you want to know what to say, turn 2 pages to 26 in your handout sheet. This is just a suggested script that was put together out of a lot of different sources as a suggestion. I'm a sober member of Cocaine Anonymous, trying to live by certain spiritual principles the way I believe God wants me to live. 2 of these are restitution and amends, and I am here today to make amends to you for the harm I've caused. My using affected our relationship. I deeply regret how I treated you, words right out of the book, or how I acted, or I was wrong to have, and we explain what harm we think we did. And then if you want to, my using has caused me to act in a way which has caused me great guilt, shame, and remorse, and my recovery requires that I make restitution for the harms I've done. And to not do so would jeopardize my sobriety. It's in the book. And then we ask those questions. Can you tell me how this made you feel? What can I do to make it right? Are there any other things you want to say to me? And since we're doing this in a fast manner, we're doing this in an 8-hour session, what we do is we put together that list of amends, now, maybe, later, never. And right now, right here, get your phone. We're going to go to number 1. We're doing it right now. And once we get through that, you've got a list of amends. Your assignment is make 1 a day. 1 a day. I'll have a copy of that list. You have a copy of that list. We're going to make the first one right now. Maybe if time allows, we could do some more. But we get on the phone right now and do it. Well, I don't know what to say. Okay, let's write it down. Let's write out a script. We're going to do it now. I'm not going to take an excuse. We'll figure out a way around it. But we're going to do it now. And your assignment is After this day, one a day. And we'll talk about it each day. If you want to have a discussion on what to say, I'll write a script for you as we're doing it. But one a day is your assignment. We pray for willingness, and then we execute the amends. Let's take a look at page 27 in your book. As a result of the first 3 steps, we got right with God. We got in harmony spiritually. As a result of 4, 5, 6, and 7, we got right with ourselves mentally. And as a result of 8 and 9, we got right with the world and everyone in it. So as a result of these 9 steps, I am in harmony spiritually, mentally, and physically, which means I'm functioning in the 4th dimension of existence. If I'm in harmony in the first 3, then I am walking in this 4th dimension, the world of the spirit, the 4th dimension. And I've done a lot of work to get to this point, and I do not want to go backwards. So Bill has supplied us with a method of prevention of relapse. Let's take a look at the next page, where we take a look at, here we go. We go back to those bedevilments, and then we match them up with the promises on page 83. And they do match up. I wish they matched up in order, but they don't. But there's an answer for every bedevilment. There's a promise. Turn to the next page. Go to page 84. How much time do I have? What, 15 minutes?
Yes,
okay, all right, page 84. Second paragraph. This thought, oops, I'm on the wrong page. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to make personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we clean up the past, which means while we're working on steps 8 and 9, we're working on 10, 11, and 12. I have sponsees who are working on step 9, currently involved in making amends, and I've got them sponsoring people because the book says it's okay to do that. We do one thing as we do the other. And the 10th step gives us the directions for every day, our walking around everyday step. We continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Underline the W. When these crop up, we ask, underline A and ask, to remove them, God to remove them at once. Notice the urgency. The first part of step 1 says continue, means it's ongoing. Second part, when they crop up, we ask God at once. Now, we're not asking God to do something at once. We are acting on it at once. There's a difference. I'm not giving God any orders. I'm the one who has to follow the orders. And the order is when they crop up, I immediately ask God to take them away. I don't say, God, immediately remove them. He's not my errand boy. Part 3 is we discuss them with someone immediately, time, D, discuss, and make amends. A, quickly, time. Then I resolutely turn, T, our thoughts to someone we can help. Why do I isolate those letters? Because I'm an idiot. I cannot remember things unless I have little tricks in my head. And I remember step 10 by remembering WADAT, W-A-D-A-T. Exactly what's up here. Watch, ask, discuss, amends, turn. And if you get real good at this, basically, it's watch, turn, watch, turn, watch, turn. And notice it doesn't say we go out to help somebody. It says I turn my thoughts to someone I could help. I know somebody who's suffering from cancer or something. I say a prayer for one of you guys. I'm turning my thoughts to someone I could help. It doesn't mean run out in the street and get the next person who comes by and carry their groceries. That's a nice thing. You could do that. But that's not what it says. It says turn your thinking away from you to somebody else. And again, the time limit, continue at once, immediately, yada, yada, yada. Step 11, to save time on page 86 is our first instruction when we retire at night. This is the 11th step, we start to work at night. I used to think that the 11th step is something, that the 10th step was something I did at night. The 10th step is the step I use in the course of the day to get myself out of the jams of the day. And maybe it's because I'm 72. I don't get into trouble at night in bed anymore. So that doesn't apply to me. So the 11th step begins at night. And basically it asks us, how did you do today with step 10? Because the questions it asks are all the questions that we were covering in step 10. We were told to watch for things. Well, was I resentful? Was I selfish? Was I dishonest? Afraid? Do I owe an apology? Have I kept something which should be discussed with someone else? Etc. We're basically just reviewing step 10. How did I do today with my step 10? And that's pretty much all there is for that part of it. The next page gives me instructions for pars. As we go through the day, page 87 at the bottom, and I'm really rushing. As we go through the day when agitated or doubtful, we ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show. To say many times each day, thy will be done. So let's slow this down a minute. As we go through the day, we pause. I think the most important thing that we don't do enough of is pausing. Pausing is where you'll find God. We pause, P. We ask, A. R. Remind, S. Say many times, thy will be done. P-A-R-S. And I'll finish up briefly with the 12th step, which is a 3-part step made up of a promise, a charge, and a challenge. The promise is, if you do this work, you will get this reward. It's on page 33 of your handbook. It's the greatest promise we offer newcomers. If you do this work, this is what you'll get. But nothing in life is free. So in the second part of the 12th step, we're being handed a bill. We're being charged with a responsibility to tell people about my experience, and more importantly, to help them have the same experience. That's what the second part of the 12th step is. I am charged. It's not a suggestion, it is a demand. When I go to a restaurant and eat, I get a bill. I can't walk out and not pay. I have a demand that has to be met. If I've had a spiritual awakening, I must be out telling you how to have one. And the challenge is the greatest challenge of all. When I put my head on the pillow at night, I got to be